Hello, and welcome back to the ABCs of ABA, Episode 3. Today, we're going to be tackling the age-old question that haunts every parent. Why? Why is the sky blue? Why do I have to eat my peas? Why do I have to take a bath? Why can Xavier stay up later? And the questions go on and on and on. Well, I have some good news for you. Today, we're only going to talk about one why question. I do have to admit, it's kind of a big one, but the answer is also essential to understanding and then adapting to or altering the behaviors of others. I know, it sounds pretty powerful. Well, it really is. So what is this all-important question? Here it is, drum roll please. The all-important question is, why? Why do we do the things we do? Why do we hit? Why do we kick? What is the purpose? Why? I think as a parent, we tend to ask ourselves this question a lot when we're feeling frustrated or upset by the behaviors of others around us. Why can't they just follow one simple direction? Well, the answer is fundamental to ABA and everything that we as behavioral consultants do. The answer literally guides every intervention that we suggest. Why? According to ABA, all behavior is learned. So let's break that down into the two most important words, learned and behavior. We're going to start with behavior. Behavior can be anything that you do that is observable to others and that a dead man can't do. I know, that's a pretty generic response. So let's delve a little deeper. It doesn't include thoughts or feelings, but anything else is fair game. From curling your hair, to hitting others, to touching your toes, to running, calling out, singing, baking, biking, doing the dishes. All of these are examples of behavior. Usually, when we talk about the term behavior, people think about socially unacceptable behaviors. They think about the hitting, the kicking, and the running. But in the ABA world, the term is really much more broad. It's literally anything you do that is observable to others. So now let's talk about learned. What does that mean? It means that behavior serves a purpose or a function. You don't engage in behaviors just because you want to. You don't engage in behaviors just because. You engage in behaviors because it gets you something. It gets your needs met. Admittedly, it might not be the most socially appropriate way of getting your needs met, but it does. If it didn't meet your needs, then you'd stop doing the behavior. Connected to this is the belief that behavior is actually a form of communication. How is it communication? It's telling others around you what you need. And it's my job as a consultant to look and listen to your behaviors and to translate them so that other people can understand their purpose. It's my job to find the function of your behavior. And that's the key. Once we know why you're engaging in a particular behavior, then we can help you get that need met in a more socially appropriate way. We'll come back to this in a minute. Right now, we need to talk about the 4 functions of behavior. In the ABA world, there are 4 basic functions of behavior, and they include sensory, escape avoidance, attention, intangible. I know, what the heck does that really mean? Well, we're going to go over each of them. So let's start with sensory. These are the behaviors that we engage in because they feel good to us. They can be done when we're in a room alone and nobody else needs to participate. So for instance, think about stretching, clicking pens in meetings, spinning in chairs, swinging, rubbing soft materials on your arms, or putting on a weighted blanket or vest, waving fingers in front of your eye, or asking for deep pressure. All of these behaviors we do because they feel good to us. So that means that they serve a sensory function. The next function that we are going to talk about is escape avoidance. This is the function of a behavior when it either A, gets us out of having to start engaging in an activity that we find aversive, or B, ends an aversive activity. Think about having to give a big presentation at work or school. Saying you have a migraine will get you a pass to the nurse or a pass out of having to do your presentation. I mean, seriously, we've all called in sick occasionally because we just didn't feel like handling work that day. That is an escape avoidant behavior. So any behaviors that get you out of something, talking to someone, eating something, running a race, doing a challenge, all of those behaviors that get you out of something, they function for escape or avoidance. Probably the best example that I can give you is the kiddo who suddenly has to go potty 400 times when it's bedtime. Other behaviors that might function for escape or avoidance include putting the oven gloves on before you take something out of the oven. You don't want to get burned. Shutting your work phone off at night. You don't want to deal with those work phone calls. Turning off a fire alarm. God, they can be so loud and obnoxious. You just don't want to deal with it anymore. Or if you're a kiddo in a classroom, smacking the friend next door to you so that you can go to the principal's office because you are sick and tired of being in that class. The next function that we're going to talk about is attention. Now, when people think about attention, they oftentimes think of praise, hugs and kisses, smacks on the back, high fives, those kinds of things. But attention is so much more than that. Attention is literally any interaction that you have with another person. It doesn't have to be just talking. It can be a look, or even the perception of a look. It can be yelling, screaming. It can be nudging your elbow. It can be guiding you in some direction. It can be a pouty face. It can be anything. Attention also comes in two different forms that we want to remember. So it can come in the positive form in the sense of praise or positive put-ups. It can come in the negative form in the sense of those pouty faces, in the sense of yelling or screaming at another kiddo. And the last function that we want to talk about is tangible. So this is when a kiddo gets something as a result of their behavior. So tangibles can come in the form of gadgets, items, or activities. It can be special snacks. In the ABA world, we call them edibles. Toys, yo-yos, balloons, earrings, nail polish, cars, large toys like computers or Game Boys, shoes, whatever it is, it's something that the kiddo wants to get their hands on. This category also includes activities that the kiddo wants to engage in. So that could be TV time, iPad time, playing outside, swimming, bowling, arcade, bounce house, using Facebook filters. All of those are activities that a kiddo might want. Okay, so we've talked about the 4 functions of behavior. Now we need to talk about why does it really matter? Who cares why the kiddo is engaging in those behaviors? Well, this term is called the fair pair rule. Now that you know why you are engaging in a behavior, I can work on teaching that kiddo a more socially appropriate behavior to get their needs met. So let's go through a few examples of the fair pair rule. So we're going to go back to our sensory suggestion or example. A kiddo smacks his head for sensory input. It feels good to him. That's the function of his behavior, sensory. So the fair pair rule states that we need to teach the kiddo another way to get that sensory input. Maybe we teach the kiddo to wear a helmet, which squeezes his head a little and gives that same squeeze feeling that feels good. If that works, then we have just taught the kiddo A, to communicate in a more appropriate way, B, allowed them to seem more typical, which will allow them to be more welcomed into their communities, and C, kept them safer. It's so much safer to get your head squeezed than it is to hit it. So again, we have taught a more appropriate behavior to get their needs met. Let's give another example. So let's think about escape and avoidance. Think about Xavier, who is in class and realizes that it's math time. And the pattern for him is pretty typical. As soon as the clocks come out in math class, he is racing out that door. And the next 15 minutes are spent with the teachers, principals, paras, anybody in the building, chasing him down hallways until finally they get him into the principal's office. 5 minutes later, when it's snack time, he is good as gold and he is ready to go back to class safely. So what was the function of that behavior? Escape. He ran so he wouldn't have to do the clocks. What do we do instead? What do we teach him? According to the fair pair rule, we teach him another way to get out of math class. Maybe we teach him to take a break. He can leave class whenever he wants, but he has to go to X location and return when the timer goes off. So why would we do that instead? Because it's kept him safer. It's made all of the teachers feel more comfortable because they know where he is and they know he's safe. And it has made sure that he's not seeming to be this big, scary kid to all of his other friends. Okay, let's give another example. Let's talk about attention. So think again about Xavier in the classroom, and it's morning meeting time. He's constantly calling out, and his teacher is cueing him. Quiet hands, in a minute, Xavier. What's the behavior functioning for? It's functioning for attention. So what do? According to the fair pair rule, we teach him a better way to get attention. We teach him to raise his hand. What's the benefits of that? Well, A, he's still getting the attention that he's looking for. B, his teacher is way less frustrated about what's going on. And C, his peers are less frustrated, so they're going to be more willing to hang out with him again. Let's give one more example and we'll talk about tangibles. So let's pretend that Xavier is back in math class again. And now it's time to write the number line. Well, another thing he absolutely hates to do is writing number lines. So he whines and he whines and he whines. And the teacher, who has to work with 18 kids and just wants Xavier to stay in the class and stay safe, gives him the iPad. What was the function of his behavior? Tangible. That's right. Xavier has learned that his behaviors get him fun time on the iPad. So what do we teach him instead? According to the fair pair rule, we're going to teach him another way that he can access that iPad. So maybe we teach him that once he gets his work done, he gets to have the iPad. I know that's the pre-Mac example. We talked about that last time. Or maybe we teach him that he does his work on the iPad. Either way, he's getting access to the iPad for appropriate behaviors, not inappropriate behaviors. So all of this comes back to behavior is a form of communication. It is a way for kiddos to reach out and get their needs met when they don't know any other way. While it may feel like your kiddo's behaviors is pointed directly at you, just trying to tick you off, it's important to look beyond that and see why they are doing it. Are they doing it to tick you off because they want your attention and being yelled at is better than nothing? Today, we've talked about 4 purposes for behavior, the 4 functions that ABA recognizes: sensory, escape avoidance, attention, and tangible. So when you consider your kiddos' behaviors this week, try and look beyond just your frustration or anger or being upset, and try to decide what your kiddo is getting as a result. Understanding the function or purpose of a behavior is not always the quick fix that you want. It doesn't magically erase the behavior or make it never happen again, but it is a very important piece of the puzzle that helps to diminish unwanted behaviors. Next week on the ABCs of ABA, we're going to talk about techniques and strategies that you can use to teach your kiddo more socially appropriate behaviors. So let's summarize what we talked about here today. First, we talked about that we all engage in behaviors for a reason. There's a function or a purpose behind it. There are 4 main functions of behavior: sensory, escape avoidance, attention, and tangible. And once we know the function of a maladaptive behavior, we try and teach a socially appropriate behavior that gets the needs met. And that's called the fair pair rule. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you next week on the next episode of ABCs of ABA. Bye, everybody.